Welcome to Could Be Pretty Cool News, the podcast where we dive into the exciting world of creative entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Casey, and together we'll embark on a journey to explore this dynamic ecosystem from multiple angles, including academia, research and data, community building, and compelling personal narratives from creative entrepreneurs themselves. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we uncover the stories and strategies behind building successful creative ventures. It's time to discover why the world of creative entrepreneurship could be pretty cool. Today, we have a very special episode recorded in part at the 2024 Podcast Movement Conference in Washington, D.C. While attending the conference, we had the opportunity to sit down with Manny Faces, an award-winning podcaster, journalist, and cultural commentator who blends hip-hop, social justice, and entrepreneurship in some pretty fascinating ways. During our chat, Manny shared insights on creative business building, staying true to your mission, and his thoughts on the future of podcasting. Hi, I am so excited to be here with you today, Manny. For those of you who do not know, I had the opportunity to hear Manny speak in June at the PRX Podcast Creator Summit in Atlanta. And I remember sitting there and just thinking, there are so many amazing points in this brief, it was 45 minutes, an hour talk that I would love to explore further on Could Be Pretty Cool News. And so we just happened to be in another place together. And I was like, please come share some insights with our audience. So I'm happy that you're doing that.
I appreciate it.
And please introduce yourself.
Thank you again. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. This is a fun thing that they're doing. We got a whole situation here. It's kind of cool. My name is Manny Faces. That's not my government name, in case you're wondering. My government name is Bobby Elbows.
Oh, okay.
It's just a stupid joke. I'm a dad, so these things happen. These are going to eke out. I do a lot of things. It's a news show, but I consider myself a journalist at heart. Worked in the journalism business for a long time. As the journalism business pivoted to audio formats, I was early in on the podcasting trend. And everything I do sort of circulates this Venn diagram of journalism and hip-hop music and culture. I'm a cultural commentator, and I've podcasts, and I've had a website, journaling, documenting New York area hip-hop music and culture outside of just the entertainment aspect. One of the things I focus on is how hip-hop music and culture is being used to uplift society or improve humanity in ways outside of entertainment, including education, health and wellness, science and technology, the fine arts, politics and activism, and some important areas. So those worlds combine with some of the podcasts that I make for myself, one of my shows, Hip Hop Could Save America, and then it intertwines itself in some of the other podcasts that I make, like Newsbeat, the social justice podcast that incorporates music and original lyrical contributions from independent hip hop artists. But we've had Dr. Cornel West on the show. So there's things that we're doing that are intertwining, being an ex-DJ and being into music for a long time, being a journalist and being into audio. Those are the things that I do, and the quick story of how I got to be here.
So, I mean, that's in particular the aspect of what you do that is most fascinating to me. The fact that you are blending journalism with artistry, creativity, and sometimes even the notion of creative entrepreneurship. For a lot of us coming in, it's like, no, I just want to make things and do my art, but oh wait, in order to do that, I need to learn how to read contracts and make budgets. So I'm curious for you, how did you sort of start down this path? Were you a musician first? Were you in the arts first and then you found your way into entrepreneurship? How did this start for you?
I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to do my own thing, but you still got to have a job. I've worked for entrepreneurs, so I haven't worked for big companies. I just happen to have come up sort of fumbling my way through life. I don't have a degree. I went to college for about 26, 27 minutes. I'm a polymath. You pick up as you go along trying to do what you want to do. So when I was making music, late teens, early 20s, I was making music. I was making beats. I had a little home studio. And so I go out and about and look for artists who needed recording studio time. I didn't have time to spend money in a big studio. and I'd bring them in. That was sort of a business. I had to create flyers and market it, and I had to do transactions, but it was very person to person, nothing too crazy. Then I worked for solo entrepreneurs. I worked in a newspaper back in New York called the Long Island Press for many years. It was an alternative news weekly, so it was not the main newspaper, but the alternate, like the Village Voice or Boston Phoenix. And that was good because they were scrappy. They would go after the big companies that didn't care. They would go against the crooked cops and companies that were doing bad stuff. And so I learned like, ooh, that's kind of a cool angle as well. And that was run by pretty much a guy and his dad, like a family owned business. So I got the entrepreneurial. I was very close to seeing how the sausage is made, as they say. So I'm complaining about this or talk about. He was very transparent about the business. So I said, okay. So I got some experience, like what it's like to run a business, what it's like to run a content creation business. I mean, that's what newspapering was. As a DJ, you get gigs here and there, and you try to do these things. All these little experiences came together when it was time to sell the newspaper. I had already built their podcasting department, but they transformed the business to a marketing agency. It's actually a really successful marketing agency now. I help like kind of pivot them. We built websites for our advertising clients, and then so again, watching it pivot, watching it change into a whole different thing. And then I was like, I want to keep doing the podcasting aspect of it. They're doing marketing. I said, that's cool and all. But the boss was like, listen, we want to keep doing this as well. But we're going to fire you, start your own company, and we'll sign on as a client. He knew that I wanted to do this for other people, but not stay tied down to the direction they were going. He knew me. We've been together for many, many years. So he says, not that this ever stopped you before, but this will give you the chance to go out and really spread your entrepreneurial wings.
And how did you feel about that? That sounds terrifying.
It was, and it still is, because this was, a matter of fact, 2019, when I started the company, I was like, this is a great time to start a business. What could possibly go wrong in 6 months? It was actually very terrifying and continues to be because of all the other things you have to do to, be business minded, which I'm not good at. Like, it's two different type brain people a lot. And like to find someone that does both of those things, but you have to learn that those experiences helped me out. Knowing that they were going to be my first big client, we did a lot of work together. I said, that's going to sustain me for a little while monetarily. It's basically them paying me what they were paying me just to do the work, not on their, payroll. And I said, all right, this is it. Like, you want to do this. You've had all this dancing around the entrepreneurial landscape for a while. Go for it. See what happens.
So when it came to having to formalize your own business, did you have the knowledge about what kind of company organization are we going to be? Do I need to get a business license?
He had help, I had a little help. We had a great accounting department, and he was like, here's how you got to set up. Make sure you do an LLC, you file as an S Corp. Like, give me some knowledge, but not anything. I had to research, look it up, and say, what do I do? I was in New Jersey at the time, so obviously state by state things are different. They were in New York. So research had to be done. I didn't know all the formalities of it. How do you get an EIN? Like, all these things. But there's an internet, and there are people that have done it. I was able to reach out and ask a couple folks that I knew for their best practices. I had already started like a nonprofit that didn't go anywhere, but like, so I'd kind of been through again, I've done so many like almosts or partials. It felt like this was the culmination of all the things that I've tried or learned or picked up on. Maybe this is the time to just give it a shot.
That's interesting. One of the things that takes me back to in 2023, the city of Atlanta converted leftover COVID funds into grants for individual creators.
Okay.
There's so many grants that are for arts organizations or arts nonprofits,
Right.
but to focus on independent creators.
Right.
It was like, wow, this is really
It was in Newark, New Jersey. They did the same thing. Yeah, it was very great.
It was this is really forward. There were so many people who weren't eligible because you had to be a formalized entity. You had to have a business bank account.
Something, yeah.
You had to be either an LLC or an S Corp or a nonprofit. You had to have a City of Atlanta business license. And I remember being on the information call, and so many people are just like, oh, my YouTube channel has 40 bajillion subscribers, and my blog has X, Y, and Z. Like, why do I need an LLC? Why do I need a City of Atlanta business license? And so that insight of like, yeah, the internet's there, or like go ask someone is, I mean, again, sadly, a lot of creatives will miss out on opportunities
Right.
because of the not fun part.
I just remember I did a DBA years ago too. I messed up the first year. I didn't do the taxes right, and I got double taxed. And you get a self-employment tax. Like you got to pay yourself a salary, so that means you got to W-2 yourself and take your own taxes out. There's a whole process. I've heard from many people that they mess up that first year because of that. I got an LLC, and I just take them out. You can, but then it's double taxed. It's a whole thing. So I didn't learn everything right away. But yeah, it's not fun. And then keeping it going isn't fun. I did have to get PPP loan and through COVID and SBA loan. Like my dad was a college professor, my mother was a housewife. There's problems in communities that don't have generational wealth, don't have that background, and you don't got that knowledge passed down. So we have to figure it out, which is why what you do is so valuable, helping tell the story of people who messed up. We mess up, and we can learn from our mistakes.
Just being taught one little nugget, or
Yep.
just being told, like, make sure you check this box and not this box,
Right.
can be detrimental to a creator's success
Yeah.
in a business.
Yeah.
So I would love to go back to the fact that you started your entity in 2019.
Yep.
As we rolled into 2020,
Mm.
what was, it seemed like there were a few different headspaces of creators and independent entrepreneurs at that time.
Yeah.
Some folks were kind of like, okay, this is it, this
Yeah.
is done.
Yeah.
And some people were like, this is the opportunity.
Yes.
I'm gonna do all the things.
Right.
Where was your headspace?
Both. It was both. I'd always, because I do a lot of things. I DJ, I have my own shows, I do speaking events. I was at the PRX, like I do talks. So my business was never just a podcasting company. It was going to be all the things that I do in one place to pay me for it, a company. So I'm like, okay, what does pandemic mean to that plan? Because now no one's putting money into podcasting. Can't go speak anywhere. Can still do DJ gigs online. So I said, okay, there's a little pivot. We could do some online stuff. I was already set up. I was doing live streams before. So I was a little bit ahead of that curve in terms of being able to present myself on the internet. So I said, okay, all hope is not lost. Develop things. Somehow I got lucky because the main client, the big client, and I picked up a couple of smaller ones and one kind of stopped. But the main one was able to hang on. And that was my old journalism family. We were doing things that were relevant. Newsbeat is a social justice podcast. So we were covering disproportionate COVID rates and problems in different communities and all the social justice aspects of that, the George Floyd situation. We had things to talk about, and it was valuable. They kept going with that. That got me through. But at the same time, I said, well, we don't know how long it's going to last. And so we have to make all the adjustments. Sort of like a hip-hop minded person, we've always done things differently. Like, we're not supposed to do it this way. They're not going to let us do it this way. So we come in through the back door because we can't come in through the front door. We smacked it. We flipped it. We rubbed it down. We made $1 out of 15 cents. And all the resiliency and all the necessities that obviously from the communities from whence it came. But folks like myself, we learned all those things. We said, this is a time to pivot. This is a time to try some new things. I talk to educators a lot on Hip Hop Save America, people using hip hop in the classroom. One of the things we often say is they were able to adapt to online teaching better than people who had never faced adversity. I think there's something about looking at the world in this way that you're at the same time terrified and frightened, but also like, how can I remix this situation? I think that helps.
I love that too, because you came from hip hop. I came from theater. I came to podcasting by way of theater. And it's a similar mentality of like, so we know we're not getting money for this. Like,
right.
No one's going,
right.
But we have to figure out how to take this curtain and make
Right.
it a beautiful gown. We have to
Right.
figure out how to take whatever cardboard we
Right.
have and figure it out.
Right.
And I think the show must go on.
That's it, yeah.
And I think that's one of the things, talking to the different creators and artists and indie entrepreneurs on this show, that has been the most striking to me is that even if they're not formally educated or trained in business,
Yeah.
whatever their creative medium is,
Right.
it somehow creeps into their business
Right.
acumen.
Yeah, it's a problem. I mean, it's problem solving. It's some of the things you need for business. We may not work well with numbers and
Excel.
that's what I'm saying. Some people
Some
are
do.
great. They can do both. We may not be really good at that, but creativity is at its core problem solving to me. Sometimes you're creating a thing that doesn't exist or making a thing that exists, but in your way, you're solving for the void. You're solving for the necessity. You're creating. It's not like I'm making a tool, but you're still solving a problem of knowledge production or whatever you might be doing. Even for a play, you're solving a problem of trying to get a story told. Like I said, we're not good at necessarily some of the nuts and bolts of business, But that can be learned along the way. And obviously listening to shows and to ask friends and people who have either made it or failed beautifully, because failure is great.
Failure is great.
Yeah.
Failure is great. Before we talk a little bit more about failure, I actually want to talk about your successes, in particular, your award winning podcast you
Yep.
mentioned earlier. I'm fascinated because we're here at Podcast Movement.
Yep.
I've been meeting people who was like, what's your podcast about? Oh, it's about business. Cool. And then you meet 10 other people who have business podcasts. Or what's your podcast about? It's about sports. You meet 10 other people who have sports podcasts. Instead of that being a discouraging thing, like, oh my God, there's so many of the same things. I want to know why you as an individual are making your sports podcast.
Right.
Because it's going to be different from this
Sure.
one. So for you making it's very hybrid, like a music podcast, but also a political podcast. How did you sort of break molds and differentiate what your show is?
Yeah. I mean, by its very nature, it's a remix, right? We're remixing some ideas. So we knew that we wanted to do journalism. I'm talking about news. Hip Hop Can Save America is more of just an interview show. But again, that's also different because we're not like, it's a hip hop show. Oh, you interview artists. Nope. Unless you're an artist doing something else. Like you might be a teaching artist. I've had an artist who's a PhD and teaches at a university. So yes, he's an artist, but we're doing something different. So even that is a remix of the interview show for that theme, that genre, right? Because it's hip hop, but it's not artistry. With Newsbeat, we were like, okay, journalism, and we were covering a lot of civil liberties and social justice stuff. That was kind of where we weren't regionally focused, but then we were just doing good stuff outside of the region and tackling these issues, and it felt right for us. The boss's wife used to be a production manager for the live version of Schoolhouse Rock. So Schoolhouse Rock, you know what that's all about, right? It used to be a TV show, an animated TV show that taught high level concepts. Everyone knows I'm Just a Bill, is the one that everyone remembers. Knowing what I do as a DJ and as a hip hop guy, because at the time I was covering hip hop in New York, I had a magazine and an event calendar, and it was my beat. And he knew what I do, and he's like, they would sing songs in Schoolhouse Rock. You know, a lot of rappers are brilliant and smart. We all talked it out and mashed up the idea together. I did happen to know some incredibly not just talented, but wise, like people that actually could have gone into journalism. They rap and they're really good wordsmiths. So I was like, wait a minute, this might could work, putting these things together. So we tried it out and we did a little pilot episode, and it was called MLK, What They Don't Teach You in School. We talked about the idea of I Have a Dream speech. Everyone hears it, but he also did some other stuff, and later in life was a little bit more progressive and revolutionary than what most people hear. Silent Night came on. He spit like kind of a thing that complemented the what we had narrated out. It punctuated it in a very compelling manner. We had dope beats, and it was dope. It was like trying it out, trying to put these things together, taking the best. And the journalists who do that are world-class journalists. They've won awards in journalism. So it's like, get the best of who you can and combine your interests and your knowledge, and don't be afraid to do the sports podcast with a little twist.
So you are a company that started at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yep.
Somehow we're coming close to the 5-year anniversary.
Yeah.
With the pandemic came not just COVID, but the social justice uprising. People having time to sit and think about all the things they wish they could change or they're ready to take to the streets about.
Yeah.
During that time, there were a lot of pledges
That's
and
right.
support. And as we're coming out of that 5-year period, there is a bit of a shift,
Yeah.
particularly with projects, organizations that do have a social justice leaning.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, as we're wrapping up, going into the future of Manny Faces Media, the work that you're doing, it sounds like you're not in a place where you're going to just compromise to get the dollar to continue operations.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about what the business world,
Right.
even for small businesses, entrepreneurs, is going to look like?
It's not so much anymore, right?
Not so much.
So that's part of it. Specifically for the type of work that I do, I don't want to compromise. Even with Hip Hop Can Save America, we like to criticize as much as we like to uplift, because we think there's value in critiquing. I tell you real quick, we had a big advertiser that we also found out was a company that had built their offices on contaminated soil, and they knew about it. So you're working in a building that didn't pass the ecological muster, right? And we had to make a decision, like, are we going to tell this story? Because they literally were our back page advertiser, which is big money in newspapers. And they're not going to like this, and they're going to pull their advertising. And we did. We told the story because it had to be told. They pulled their advertising, and we survived. It was a big hit. So I'm like, okay, I just have to be smarter, better, more active in the business side, the funding, figure it out. Like I said, grants is an avenue we're pursuing heavily right now to fund some of the stories that we want to tell. I think once you get to that level, I've won the awards, great. I make really good podcasts, great. But that doesn't pay the bills. People don't care. We're always looking for growth and reaching audiences. That can turn into money. Funding it could come from grants. So I think that's an area that's underutilized, podcasters and creatives. But you got to start. You got to at least be a LLC or something, because and some of them won't go to nonprofit. Only go to nonprofits. But if you're an individual, you can get a fiscal sponsorship with a nonprofit. The reason why you're creating a thing that is either different or never been made before is because you have that already. It's in you. You got to apply that to the business side of things and the way the world moves as best that you can. And we're all just trying to figure that out.
Amazing. The show must go on. I think if I could quickly just ask one more question.
Yeah.
So yes, we are here at Podcast Movement, podcasters everywhere. We're all in a space where we all get it. We're all living it.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about the role of podcasting in the next year, even?
Yeah.
As we're still sort of figuring out what it is we're all doing.
Yeah, I'm actually still optimistic. When we get podcasts in the cars, like natively, when we get internet radio, like where you don't have to Bluetooth in and it's just in your car, which is starting to happen. 30% of the people listen to podcasts, or 37%, and it's growing. But I think it's going to skyrocket. I think there's going to be more opportunities. I think people still don't, get it. I know a ton of people that don't listen to a single podcast, or they watch a YouTube interview and call it a podcast. So there's still opportunity in the industry. Cream gonna rise to the top. We're making groundbreaking, genre-bending stuff, and more voices, more diverse voices are still underrepresented. You see it, I see it. So that means there's more opportunities going forward. So I'm still optimistic about it. I love the medium. I think it's powerful. I love bringing video into the mix. So there's a lot of things that are happening.
Yes, optimism, remixing the elements that we have, turning it into something brand new, bringing in folks who are supporting us, who see the vision, who apparently tell you to go and start your own thing. These are all amazing insights that I think our audience is really going to appreciate. So if anyone listening does want to reach out to you or learn more about your work, where can they do that?
MannyFaces.com links to all the things that I do, so that's a good place. If you Google Manny Faces, not any other Manny Faces, Instagram is there and all the things. LinkedIn especially, I'm there too. So yeah, you find me. It's pretty simple. I appreciate the time and knowing that we can all reach out and help each other out. I think that the more of us, my partners, my friends I'm working with, we're working with each other. We're reaching out, lifting up, and doing it as creators, helping creators, because we know what it's like. So the more of this that happens, the better for all of us.
From one creative entrepreneur to another, let's shift gears and dive into the world of music technology and community building. Our next guest is revolutionizing the way independent musicians connect and collaborate. Joining us is Darryl Stephens, co-founder of the Bass Parlour app. Darryl's journey from aspiring baseball player to music producer to tech entrepreneur is a testament to the power of following your passion and adapting to change. In our conversation, we explore how Bass Parlour is creating a global network for musicians and the importance of community in the creative process.
What's going on, everybody? Darryl Stephens here, co-founder of the Bass Parlour app. Bass Parlour app's an app that connects musicians around the world. And when I say musicians, I mean artists, producers, songwriters, instrumentalists, audio engineers, whatever you do in music, the Bass Parlour app is for you. You can come together, find other musicians around the world, find people to collaborate with, to learn with, to grow with, to mentor, to mentee from, and just to come together and have a nice, big, worldwide music community. I'm gonna go all the way back to the beginning. I grew up playing sports. I was really into baseball, and I thought I was gonna be a professional baseball player. So I played high school baseball, played college baseball, And I was always a music lover. I didn't grow up playing an instrument. I didn't grow up like producing or anything like that or making beats, but I was always a person like in our neighborhood. We had a close-knit group of friends in my neighborhood. We were all around the same age. So we used to always play basketball together, ride bikes together and everything like that. But I will always be the person that brought the music, making mixtapes, just doing things like that. So I was always a music lover, but baseball and sports was my love and what I thought was gonna be my career. Fast forward, when I finished college, unfortunately didn't get drafted out of college. I had to find something to replace that passion, replace that love. And so I really started getting into music production. So once I was finished with college, I really started making a lot of beats, really listening to hard to music, dissecting the things and why it is I like the music I like, start listening to different genres of music, and then really got into audio engineering. So went down to a school after I finished undergrad, went to a school called Full Sail in Orlando, and then learned recording arts. And back then, this is 2005, 2005, there was a much smaller school. It's huge now. It's got all these different programs and everything like that. But back then, it was basically this recording arts and a couple more different programs, live sound and some more different things. I took the recording arts path and just learned how to be an audio engineer, learned a lot more about music production, learned a lot more about sound itself, and just all the elements of music and sound. Also started trying to learn more about music theory, playing piano at that point. And I'm not good. I ended up stopping taking lessons, but what I learned was a foundation of music theory that really helped me out in the production. So anyway, when I finished there, I worked for EA Sports as a sound designer and audio engineer for 4 years. And on the side, that's when I really did music production, worked with a lot of little local artists, did audio engineering on the side. And it was just like, it replaced sports for me. So that was like I was full gung-ho into it, loved it, spent all waking hours. If I wasn't working, I was making beats and producing. And, after a while, it got discouraging because I'm a social person, but as a producer, you're locked in your room. Well, not like you lock yourself in your room. It's not like someone keeps you in a cage or anything like that, but you lock yourself in your room and just making beat after beat. And it's awesome. I loved it. At the same time, I missed that interaction with the artist. And, at that time, Orlando it wasn't as big of a music city as now. Still wouldn't call it a music city. It's more of a tourist, but they still have a lot of musicians there because of Disney and Universal and all that. So anyway, I was like, okay, I started dying down how much I was making music. Ended up leaving EA Sports and going to get a master's degree and went to Howard University in DC to get a master's. And then I started seeing like a lot of little WeWorks popping up. Everybody was doing like, the shared workspace thing. And I love the idea. I was like, this is an incredible idea, but what if they had something like this for producers? And I was trying to thinking that would have solved the problem that I had at the time. If you could have a shared workspace for producers, and if I was a producer, I had other producers around me producing, but also I had also artists and all kinds of instrumentalists around me. And I could say, okay, now check this beat out. We could jump on the studio and make it. So it gives you that feel of camaraderie and feel of a community, but you can still get the separation you need to really hone in and start producing. So anyway, I had that idea in my head, and I started throwing a lot of different artist events in DC. I was living in DC at the time, throwing a lot of different artist events, and just inviting independent musicians to come out. It's like more of like a share the aux or pass the aux type events where, all right, come out, producers, artists, play what you got, play what you're working on, get feedback from other artists and other producers, and then, start networking and then forming teams. So I started throwing like this month after month after month, building a bigger audience, and it started getting pretty big in DC. And so I was like, okay, let me try this in Atlanta. Started doing the same thing in Atlanta and was building momentum. So I was like, I wanted to start a place though, like an actual studio. So instead of having these one-off events, even though they were every month, a place where I can have these events, but also have a studio, have different stations set up. And my original thought was to have it in DC. DC is not nearly as big as a music city as Atlanta is. And on top of that, being from Atlanta, it was like it just made sense for me to move back to Atlanta, start this studio, and go from there. And so I moved back to Atlanta, opened a studio called Bass Parlour Studios, and we hit the ground running. We started throwing these events on a monthly basis, but we tweaked them. So instead of having a pass the aux events, what we did was I had these music collaboration events. So same thing, invite producers and artists, instrumentalists to come out to the studio or to the shared workspace. So basically it was 10 stations, a shared workspace and a studio in the back, a small little studio in the back that had pretty much everything you need to record. So you had about 30 independent artists, producers come out, and I used to pair them up. Okay, you two, and I give everybody like 90 minutes to make a beat. I'm sorry, make a song, make whatever portion of a song that they can make. You would just have group or teams of 2 or teams of 3, never met each other before, just having 90 minutes to create something, and then they would perform whatever they created at the end of that 90 minutes. So I was like, okay, cool. So people were loving it. We actually ended up getting sponsorship from Samsung. It started really growing. And we really became like a headquarters for independent musicians in the city. It was a place where they can come and they can get a station. They can come and we had also lessons and all kinds of different things going on: music lessons, piano lessons, music production lessons, which is our most popular lessons. And things are really going good. They were growing, but then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I was like, oh man, this is killing me. This is killing me, Smalls. So I was like, all right, let me shut the studio down, but I don't want to give up on the idea itself. So I was like, okay, how can I pivot? If I can't have a physical location, how can I still serve independent musicians in a similar way? So what I decided to do is have an app built. Now, I'm not a developer. I'm not a tech person like that. I know a lot more than I did then, just because I've had to learn it, but I'm not an app developer. So I partnered with a developer, I did all the designs, all the user interface stuff. So pretty much he just had to code it, because I had to show it exactly how I want it to look, had examples and everything like that that I showed them, or them. It was a team, small team. So they built the app. It took maybe about 8 months for them to build, after testing and building and all that kind of stuff. And then I launched the app at the beginning of 2021, like end of 2020, like December, beginning of 2021 was our official launch. And like the point of it was just to serve as a community. So what I call it is a musician lounge, like an online musician lounge, where musicians can come, they can find other musicians to work with, whether it's an artist, songwriter, producer, instrumentalist, whatever category it is, it's all there. A sound designer, audio engineer too. And then they can find each other. And what we just launched also is they can find each other. We have a contest where they can collab on the song, and then they can upload it to the contest in order to win prizes each month. So we have different contests each month. And now what we just launched is what we call Parlors Live, which is you can have a live room where you can have music lessons if you want to, different workshops, just discussions on different music things, interviews, anything you want to do. But your audience isn't the general public, it's musicians. So it's like a musician lounge where musicians are the people leading it, musicians are the ones that are in there. So it's just a headquarters in a home or a lounge. Parlor is a lounge, basically. I always love the word parlor. It's a parlor for just musicians. I'm kind of long-winded on that, but that's everything in a nutshell. Big nutshell though, but it's everything in a nutshell. My mom was an entrepreneur. When I was really young, I must have been about 8. She opened up a shop, and I'm from Decatur. So this shop was on Memorial Drive, and basically was like she had all kinds of like little trinkets and stuff for the house. Then she had clothes, women's clothes and travel wear, and just a lot of different things in this shop. Just looking at how much joy she got from, and I was really young, so I didn't really understand on the complex level, but just seeing how into it she was for her job and what she loved to do, that was really impactful. But she ended up closing down the shop and then honing in her product. So she just got away with all the different trinkets and stuff in the house and just focused on women's clothing, and then did trade shows around the country. And so she just did a whole bunch of trade shows, pretty much 2 or 3 a month. So she was always on the road doing trade shows. And I remember me and my brother, we always kid my mom because we say we grew up working in a sweatshop, because we had to grow up. She turned the garage into this little factory. And then we would we would work in the factory for probably like 50 cents an hour. It was something like ridiculous, but we used to save that money so we can get baseball cards and get candy after school and stuff like that. But so she had basically free workers working for us, which is me and my brother. But yeah, so I just viewing how, first of all, how independent like her schedule was and how she can do things, because she was always she took us to school every day, was there, but also she can work the hours that she was available and work around helping her and my dad raised us. So my mom, they were a partnership. Taking us to school, making sure everything was good. We really into sports, so take us to practice and all that kind of stuff. Being a team mom, she was the team mom for every single one of our teams. But also basically had a full-time job with her business and that she really loved. And so that really always had an impact on me. And I was always a creative person. Like I was always thinking of different ways to do things. I wasn't, and at that age, all through high school, I was so focused on sports, I didn't really think about it on an entrepreneurship level, but I knew I liked to create things and build things. So she was really my first mentor and my biggest inspiration when it came to start my own business. So that was that. And so when I finished, I fast forward through the story earlier. So what happened was when I left EA Sports, I didn't go directly to DC. I went back to Atlanta and started my first business. And my first business was like with one of my really good friends. And we started this business. It was like a apparel company for youth sports. And so basically we got a couple like high-end cameras, learn photography real quick, and would take these action shots of youth sports, like youth sports moments, whether it's basketball, baseball, whatever it was. And then we bought this like printer where you can print pictures onto a t-shirt, and we would sell those t-shirt packages to the parents. So it was like and then we had on the back of the t-shirt the last name of their kid. So it was like jerseys for parents to wear at their kids' sports events. And so that's how I learned. So I made so many mistakes in running that business. Like, so that's actually the inspiration of me going back and getting my MBA, because I was like, I don't know enough about elements of running a business. I didn't know enough at that time about finance and analytics and tracking progress and all this kind of stuff that you don't have to have an MBA. You don't have to go to school to learn this, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And I was like, I got to learn this. And I think this might be the best route to learn this stuff. So yeah, so like I made so many mistakes on that first business that I carried on to what I'm doing now and just learn from those mistakes. And yeah, I think that's like an important, the passages. You have to make these failings and these, I wouldn't even call it these learning situations. It's not really a failing or a failure. It's more of like, okay, I made this mistake. How can I build from it? I made this mistake. How can I build from it? How can I learn from it? And so that was my route. So my mentor, I would say my entrepreneurship mentor is my mom, and my inspiration is my mom. And then just going out there, putting yourself out there, just learning, how to run a business. And the biggest adjustment is that internal drive. You have to have a lot of internal inspiration, internal drive, and stick to itness, because you are the one motivating yourself. That's a whole different ball game than having to show up to a job, you know what I mean, and getting paid, and someone else basically having external motivation. You still have to have a lot of internal, but it's a whole different ball game, I believe my mission because I always tried to serve the issue that I had. And the issue I had was not having a place where I could find a lot of people to work with. And I know that a lot of people have the same issue, especially independent musicians. It's different for if you're a signed artist to a record label and you already have a network of people. And you probably still want to meet more people and stuff. But for my specific target are independent musicians, artists, everything, and they're hungry for that collaboration, for that need, and for that want to learn things, want to build things with somebody. That's part of the fun of making music. Part of it is just creating something. At least for me, part of it was creating something that I did this, I created this, and listen to how it sounds. Part of it was when I'm in there and creating something with somebody else, and I'm creating something new, and we're both adding to this gumbo. You know what I mean? That was a lot of the fun too. So I'm always have myself when I'm creating these products. The inspiration lies my issue or my problems that I had when I was producing, and that's a starting point. But then on top of that is the feedback that I get from users, the feedback that I get from who I'm trying to reach. All that is built on top of all that. So I think it's important. I think it's important for me because I just really get excited when I see musicians creating together and collaborating together, and I know where I want to see. I love when I see different genres creating something that's brand new and different, people who would never come across, either in different countries or different areas or just different genres, different kinds of music, subgenres. So that's what motivates me. I think for an artist or for a musician, it helps make the music better. When you can't be, and this is, thankfully, it's not as much of a problem with the internet and tools like Bass Parlour. But when you're siloed out, you can get stagnant as far as your growth. But when you're working with somebody and adding to it, it adds to the whole flow and to the whole vibe of everything. And I think that comes out. I think the end product of that is better music and music that speaks to people more. So, like I said, we just launched Parlour's Live. So Parlour's Live is where you can have your own private room. Anybody can join that room. Any musician can join that room. Where you can have music discussions, you can have workshops if you want to teach something that you learn. If you want to join someone else's parlor room and learn what they're teaching, you just want to have a discussion on anything. Who's the best producer in the past 10 years, whatever it is, or you have something like this, like an interview. You have an interview with another musician. So what we're focused on is really a place where people can come together and network for just musicians. It's like our home, our headquarters, our base where we come, we can learn, we can grow from each other, we can mentor each other, we can everything. It's like our spot. The next step what we're working on doing in the future is, in addition to be able to network and to grow and to even join the contest, our Bass Parlour contest, and learn lessons, is we be able to produce and record music through the app. So that way, like if I'm here in Atlanta, I can connect with somebody that's in, I don't know, Ghana, and we can make a song together remotely, like in real time, remotely. I can add somebody that like in Ireland, we can create something together, like the three of us. And then we can put that on Spotify, we can put that on Apple Music, and we can monetize that. So that's what we're going with it. It's like a one-stop shop for all musicians, like a musician home where we can, so think about like basically what I was doing at the studio. Same thing, same concept I'm doing with Bass Parlour is, okay, it's a spot for me to go. I don't know who I'm going to meet. I might meet with somebody, it might be somebody I would never come across. It probably will be somebody I would never come across. And we can create something, and then if we can create it, hold it, and we can monetize it too. So it's bringing the world all together in one studio, and that's the whole plan of Bass Parlour.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Until next time, we encourage you to continue nurturing your process. Farewell, and may all of your creative endeavors flourish. Could Be Pretty Cool News is a Could Be Pretty Cool original production that was workshopped as a part of the 2023 Google News Initiative Pre-Launch Lab. This episode was edited by Trinity Jackson. Our executive producer and host is Casey Willis, and our production coordinator is Liz Moore. The original theme music was composed by Camille Stennis, and our cover art was designed by Aaliyah Johnson. Special thanks to our guests. To find out more about them, you can visit our newsletter at couldbeprettycoolnews.substack.com. Thank you for listening.